Media influence. It is clear there are media effects, but measuring those are actually quite complicated. Development research theories have evolved from those emphasizing direct influence, those suggesting little influence, those arguing for select influence and long term consequences. First phase, all powerful media, magic bullet models. 1930s, concern of mass media for strong effect war propaganda. Hypodermic needle model, magic bullet theory. People are easily misled by media. Media content have the same effect to everyone who consumed it. Audience, passive. Media effects understood as a direct response to the stimulus. Very powerful, uniform, distributed theory. Mass society theory, growing homogenization of the population, decline in international group relation, and weakness of traditional personal bond. History context, urbanization, industrialism, individualism. Because people were more cut off from social ties and institution in the mass society, they were more vulnerable to media influence and manipulation. Strong media effects, pessimistic views on media, society changing less stability, media is socializing agent. Mass society. Describing modern bureaucratic industry society and constructing that with traditional agrarian society. Emotional contagion, perfectly rational individuals could get caught up in crowd behavior and take part in action they otherwise would never consider. So that's mass society theory. Emotional contagion, perfectly rational individuals could get caught up in crowd behaviors. Weaknesses both theories, unscientific, not based on empirical research, underestimate audience, agency, cultural, and tradition. Second theory of powerful media put to the test, limited effect model. 1950s, weak effects. Transitional from assumption to empirical inquiry. Limited weak effects of media. Media influence was elicited by interviewing social and psychological factors, weak and short lived instead of media messages reinforce existing belief, selective exposure, selective understanding, and selective recall. Rather than a direct influence of people, media were conceptualized as happening through a two-step flow of influence. Persuasive media content is disseminated through a wider audience by opening letters. No. Okay, so why media and communication theories? There are three important reasons testing popular assumptions and trying to explain how media effects work. Media has become a dominant social institution in our society next to schools, and the mass media is a powerful socializing agent. So, socialization is the process whereby we learn and internalize the values, beliefs, and norms of our culture, and in doing so, develop a sense of self. So, basically, as a kid, we go into the society and we socialize, we talk, we learn about our values, beliefs, norms, and then we understand who we are, so a sense of self. Interpersonal communication is one to one communication, a contact of a single person with another. It's very interactive. Basic communication media model is sender, message, medium, receiver. So a sender talks, says something, a message, medium is the voice, and receiver receives, listen to it, and understands it. Mass communication is basically just one person talking to a public. It's public speeches. Traditional mass media model is sender, message, medium, and a lot of receivers. So basically, yeah, mass communication. The internet blurred the lines and is both mass and interpersonal communication, enabling users to play different sorts of roles if they choose so. We're we're users of media rather than receivers of audience members. The traditional mass media model shows merely receivers but fails to capture the dynamic interplay that potentially exists between the media industry and its users. So, simplified model of media in the social world is in the middle there is social world, there is active audience, there is media industry, there is technology and media message or product, and it all is interconnected with each other. Aber, that's why arrows are double-headed, reflect the potential interactive nature of media. Media is not circular or not linear, suggests the endless feedback loops that occur among components. Users and industry. Human agents, contact, and technology affect each other. The relationship between the industry and users are mediated by content, technology, and the social world. So basically, what users like or interpret really shows on what industry will be like or what how industry will earn. Users may be influenced by the media content they see, but they must actively interpret and construct meaning from that content. They should like it, they should be interested in what it's going to show for the industry to be alive. So, the social construct of reality is when, although reality exists, we must negotiate the meaning of that reality because of different perception. So, that's basically how we construct, how we see reality as itself. A sociological perspective means that we want to understand that relationship between individuals, decisions, and the broader social context structure. There's an infinite tension between structure and agency, so the tug of war. What is social structure? Any recurring pattern of social behavior, like formats, economic consideration, anything that is very structural, can enable people to achieve something, but also puts constraints on human actions and limit options for people, which is good in an idea of law. Agency. International and undermined human action. Independent decision and freedom. Personal preferences, creative decisions, art. Helps reproduce, shape, and maintain structure. Exercising our human agency can change the structure over time. So, three levels of tension between structure and agency. Relationships among situations. Social structures affect the media, and how does media influence other social structures? For example, family. Institutions outside the control of media personnel set certain legal and economic limits within the media industry must operate. In relationships with an institution is how does the structure of media industry affect media personnel and influence media content and media organizations. Last, relationships between institutions and the public. How does the media industry influences the users of media? How the media users affect the industry? Oh my god. Uh, A short history of media technology. First, face-to-face communications, cave painting, then 1800s, printing press, printed books, more literalistic, first steps toward mass media. Late 1600s is first newspapers, regular appearances, commercial and several purposes, information, advertising, gossip, early mass media. 19th century industrialization. Telegraph, camera, phone, photograph, radio, motion pictures. And 20th century is mass media and mass communication because, obviously, of industrialization, urbanization, and capitalism. Operation starts to be on a large scale. Recent, the internet, the first medium to embody digitization, the shift from analog to digital media, so just digitalizing everything like photos. Such code can be easily copied and making media content exist in large amounts, and digitization sets the stage for convergence, where previously distinct form of media now blur, so they converge with each other. They're now a blurry mass. Like traditional media, one to many, new media, one to many, and many to many. No senders and anonymous receivers, no senders and receivers, but also anonymity. One way communication, interactive communication. Nothing. Convergence. There's both continuity and change in media industries. Even though new technologies, same old ones, are still being used, new technologies can disrupt existing practices in the media industries. For example, broadcasting resulted in a decline of cinema going. YouTube is far more popular. YouTube, TikTok, etc. Theories about the role of technology can be placed on the structure of agency continuum. Opposite poles of a continuum: technological determinism and social constructionism. Technological determinism identifies technology as the central cause element in the process of social change. So, technology just determines everything. AI is going to take over the world. Technologies are the primary cause of major social and historical shifts. Effects of technologies on users, organizations, and societies emphasizes structures and neglects human agency. Critique: technology is composed of inanimate objects. It is humans who cause things to happen by their actions. There are other factors that shape sociological change, like regulations and preference of different users. Scholars who focus on materiality, physical aspects of media matter, but not in a simplistic way, Physical foundation of technology, interpret needs, cables, technology material elements offer opportunities and place limitation on what medium can be used for, and make some types of media more suitable for some purposes than others. Langdon Winner. Autonomous technology. A general label for all conceptions and observation of the effect of a technology somewhat out of control of human agency. So autonomous technology is artificial intelligence or AI. Thomas Huge, technological momentum. Technological influence changes over time. New technology, humans have agency over the ways in which it is developed. Deployed and used is still flux and full of possibilities. So technological momentum is just technology is changing, computers are developing new systems, etc. Over time, technology becomes established, routinized, and institutionalized, developing a culture around it, making it more difficult to contest or change or to stop it. Standardization of technology. Basically, if it's hard to stop, it's standardization of technology. It's a routine now. Historically, most media scholars have focused on media industries, content, and the users rather than on technology, arguing if it was essentially neutral. Exception to this thinking, medium theories. Media ecology. The very nature of medium can be the key to its social impact, which is, by the way, by Marshall McLuhan, who is also Toronto School, Harold Annis, and this is technological determinism, but optimistic. Medium theory, the medium is the message, concerns the impact it has on society and communication. So the idea by Marshall McLuhan is that whatever medium you use, either if it's a photo medium, if it's newspaper or video content, it creates a different emotional level and emotional understanding of the thing you're trying to show. So it's really important to choose the right medium. So it emphasizes on the technological characteristics instead of content. Every medium is suited for a particular kind of experience, and each medium disrupts traditional and reshapes social life. New media technologies rework the balance of the four senses, isolating and highlighting certain senses at the expense of others. Development of print media intensifies the visual and separates it from other senses, in particular sound. Print media created an environment which is more individualistic and detached. Development of electronic media reconnects the sense of fragmented by print and global extension, bring back to preprint face-to-face status of harmony. So basically, when you're reading printed press, you feel more alone and inside, but then you're in social media, you feel like you're connected to the world, to all the other people. Neil Postman, 1985 technological determinism, but pessimistic. Example of media theory neglects agency of people. The rise of TV was the central cause of the decline of in the seriousness of public life. TV encouraged entertainment we could no longer can think seriously about social and political issues. We're amusing ourselves to death. So Neil Postman's idea is that we are amusing ourselves to death. Media is just a distraction. In contrast with print media, reading supports analytic thoughts and rationality. Print media associated created theory, therefore rational serious populations. TV challenges print-based models of thinking by holding up trivial images that often work by generating emotional responses rather than by appealing to logic. TV is decline of serious substance in the media, which is, in my opinion, true because I think Neil Postman showed that TV makes us not only dumber, but the fast change of everything gives our brain time to not think, just see the pictures, and we're not really controlling what we're thinking. Telegraph enables communications over long distances. Three important consequences for news reporting. One is the relevance to the readers because info came from faraway places. Two, powerlessness of readers. News that has no relations to their own actions because of the distance made that feel powerless about the situation. And three is sacrificing context. Speed of news become more important. News would repeat events without the connection between them. Quantity over quality or depth. Fodor also did not encourage logical thinking. Daniel Boorstin, 1961, pseudo-events. Events planned for the express purpose of producing dramatic images that can be disseminated or reported. The biggest example, Disneyland. They have no independent existence, they take place only to be publicized, carefully planned, formatted to accommodate the media celebrity, situation staged for a mass media, press conferences, or photo opportunities, or paparazzi shoots. Jean Baudrillard, 1988. Hyperreality. Contemporary society is increasingly characterized by hyperreality, in which the boundary that is used to separate reality from its representation has imploded, blurring between images and reality. Hyperreality is that which has gone beyond the real, supplanting or erasing it. It's a new world. It's like reading a book about fantasy world. That is hyperreality. Mediated realities can be perceived more real than reality. Representation that have no reference to actual reality, virtual world, where representation become a separate reality. VR, Disneyland, Las Vegas, reality TV, opinion polls that might affect voting behavior. The claims that TV must be about entertainment do not stem from some technological law of nature. They are the result of an industry driven by people and market forces, in which the need for profit has dominated. Advertising. Technology matters, that and social forces are mutual influentials. Relates to social constructionism. Focuses on the role of active human agents in ultimately determining how technology is developed and used. So, construction of sociological success and failure, different social factors. Capacities and potential of new technologies. Technology itself matters. Economic influences price and market structure. Priorities of owners and inventors' social norms. Competing technologies. Technologies often coexist or build upon each other instead of entirely replacing each other. User preferences, regulation, and the public perception. Social constructionism is part of a broader sociological perspective that sees all of this social reality as socially constructed. Social reality is produced in three steps. People create society through ongoing process of physical and mental activity. Over time, these creations come to seem more objectively real, separate from human activity, and people internalize the norms and values of their culture, thereby being influenced by their own creations. So social construction is a part of a broader sociological perspective, and they're produced by three things: that people create society, over the time those creations become real or they separate from human activity, and people internalize their values and create their own values, and because they forget about it, they seem normal. However, because we collectively create social reality, we can always change it. The same goes for technology. We ultimately have the power to alter how we use it. We just don't want to do it. Domestication theory. Ordinary users appropriate technology of all sorts, bringing it into their homes and daily lives. So consumers connect to the outsider world of commerce while asserting their own identities through their consumption and use of technology. So the domestication of theory is basically that we use technology in our everyday lives, like Alexa or Alisa, etc., and it becomes normal. Media technologies are both influenced by and shapes social life. Technologies are socially constructed by cultural norms, regulation, and economic forces. Chapter 3: The Economies of the Media Industry. Production perspective. Media productions are the result of a social process of production that are shaped by a variety of social structural forces and that occur within an institutional framework. Focus on production process instead of specific media products. So, production perspective is just focusing on production process instead of specific media. Media industries are affected by economic considerations, but which could be seen as structural constraints. But there is still some human agency to challenge this structure. So it goes with structural constraints at commerce to human agency and creativity. Contemporary media companies perform three key tasks: products, the media content; platforms, the sites and services we host; and pipes, the conduit by which we access media and platforms, like cables, cable TV, etc. But companies are often involved in all three industry sectors. They own products, platforms, and pipes. Media relied on attracted audiences to sell by advertisers. Focus content. Now, social media are now directly content creators. Users produce content. Companies now deliver people to advertisers, focus, and audience. So, one of the three owned activity social media content generated by official accounts associated with a program or network is a traditional media. Organic activity is content generated by a viewing audience. So, first one is the companies creating TikToks, creating videos, etc., and the second one is just general person creating something. Concentration of ownership. A small number of large corporations own a significant percentage of media production, platforms, and pipes. So this is concentration of ownership. It's like Disney controlling Disney Plus and different animation studios, then Disneyland merchandise, etc. But it's also bigger companies like Coca-Cola having Fanta, Sprite, etc. being one company. This media consolidation. These large companies are conglomerates. They are made up of a number of different companies, all owned by the same corporate parent, conglomeration. So the whole process of owning a lot of companies is conglomeration. Practice is conglomerates, vertical integration. The process by which one owner acquires all aspects of production and distribution of a single type of media product. So vertical integration is basically like music. A music label has an artist, they have CDs, they have music, they have Spotify. Everything is produced by one company vertically. The company can then better control the entire process of creating, producing, marketing, and distributing media products, giving it a leverage in the marketplace. Efficient for media owners because it allows them to control different aspects of media production. Like a movie company acquires movie theaters. Horizontal integration, the process by which one company buys different kinds of media, concentrating ownership across media types rather than up and down through one industry, helps promote one another's operation, gives opportunity for cross promotion, multiple media products working together to promote our media products, like movie merchandise, soundtracks of a movie. Basically, Wicked. Wicked having collaborations, Wicked having musicals, Wicked having movies. Used to be content is king. Now, owning pipes. But primary strategy is content, pipes, and platforms. That's vertical integration. Across that have an economic stake in the industry. Media owners, advertisers, investors, shareholders. They can have explicit or implicit political power or influence over the content production practices. Consequences of conglomeration and integration. Media concentration makes the process of producing media more efficient. Synergy, producing benefits that would be impossible for a single separated operated unit of a company. So different components of a conglomerate. Increase in media cross promotion and a decrease in media products not suitable for cross promotion. Difficult for smaller media firms to compete with conglomerates. Synergy is just them merging all each other, having this amazing energy like fucking wings. Media conglomerates have the potential to wield a great deal of political power. They could use their media outlets to promote a very specific political agenda. Ownership by major corporations give us reasons to believe that a whole range of ideas will be visible primarily in less prominent media. This does not mean that all media images are deformed. It means that some ideas will be widely available, whereas others largely absent. Advertising is an important source of media companies. The commercial nature of the media industries can have an effect on what is included and excluded. Media companies can decide to avoid controversial themes in order not to offend audiences or advertisers. Objectivity of news in order to please advertisers. As news shed away from political issues and turns to a variety of treasures, sports, fashion to support a company ads. Self censorship purposely avoid newsworthy stories or softening of them, making them more positive or please advertisers. So self-censorship is when media outlet is trying to kind of sugarcoat things. Advertisement, powerful influence news media. In a capitalist system, media organization must focus on making profit. Logic of safety. Media industries must manage uncertainty because of failure. A lot of products flop in the norm of sector. In this context, of unpredicted consumer preferences, media industries tend to use formats that have proven successful, like talent shows or economic consideration lead to less diversity in media content. So basically, logic of safety is what is safe, what has been done before when we have X Factor or Dom 2 all over again. Network television. Declining audiences because of new competition, Netflix, decline in advertising revenue, and cost of production increased. To compensate, the networks have turned to less expensive programs to produce. Free news media. Competition for digital and social media leads to a decline in news readership and less income from advertisement. This has forced many organizations to cut costs by closing foreign bureaus and by decreasing the numbers of journalists, which means less critical reporting and more automated journalism. To capture the attention of readers, some have shifted to sensationalism, hard news, more entertainment based, it sells better, the Hollywoodization of news, growth of celebrity stories. So basically, yellow press, sensual, interesting, makes people interested. News coverage more oriented towards elites and government who provides easy to use information with less coverage of events of perspectives outside the official world, which requires bigger investments. Media pluralism. The degree to which there is diversity in media content readily available to audiences, a matter of both ownership and output. So basically, media pluralism is there is a lot of different media, plural. More diversity, more content we can choose from, more exposed to different views. Particularly important for news, media is the watchdog of democracy. Governments and companies are being checked. Everything is produced by media. Homogene- Homogenization hypothesis. One widely adopted argument has been that the media owned by a few will lead to products that lack diversity. Ownership becomes increasingly concentrated, the content of media will become increasingly uniform. That is homogenization of hypothesis that every company is owned by a bigger company and every media that is produced by the bigger company is going to be the same. The corporate voice has been so generalized that most of us don't even think of it as a specifically corporate voice. The corporate views has become our view, even though the interests of the corporate entities that own mass media are far from universal. Concentration, homogeneity, competitive market, diversity. The system of production within the music industry changed from a closed system. Major companies used a limited number of familiar channels to produce and distribute the music that dominated the charts, to an open system. The major record companies control large-scale manufacturing, distribution, and publicity, but draw on simultaneous independent producers to maintain the validity of a popular music market. Created diversity despite high market concentration. Advertising impact. Product placement, brand and entertainment, like Lego Movie. Brand integration, companies contribute products or props that keep film producing costs down. Chapter 4, Political Influence on Media. Not all political uh, influence is always negative. Every country needs some form of regulation of media. Media regulation, the tension between human agency and structure. Totalitarian system, the structural constraint of the state largely dominated the potential agency of the media. Government sanctioned images and message to support state interest. The totalitarian system is basically what uh, North Korea is. Democratic societies protect the freedom of the press and freedom of expression, but still subject to government regulation. Just not as much, but it's still influence. The first freedom, limiting government intervention. Hands-off approach towards the media, democratic countries, deregulation, free market system to accommodate both of the needs of media producers and consumers. Democratic forum in which consumers, not governments, get to decide. Companies tend to aim for deregulation. They want as much freedom and agency as possible without being restricted by regulation as structural constraints versus the public interest, using government interventions to defend the interests of authors and inventors, regulate in public interest that is good for society. Generalized concern for the well-being of the citizenry as a whole rather than individual private interests. In this view, in a regulated free market, there is a tendency towards high concentration and not monopolies. To support diversity of media pluralism, they believe that governments should regulate media. Well-financed Western media could provide developing countries with relatively low-cost media content. Concerns about cultural imperialism, local cultures could be eradicated in the face of flood of foreign imports. Media regulation also involves the protection and promotion of flooding indigenous media industries. Selective deregulation. Regulation that either benefits the industry as a whole or a part of it. So it's selectively choosing what to deregulate, but that only will fit what they actually want. Three broad categories of debate. Regulation ownership, regulating ownership of media outlets, antitrust laws, antitrust regulation. Media technology evolved in ways that have encouraged centralization and larger scale operations. Most competitive media ownership is affordable only for those with substantial capital. The government seeks to act in the public's interest in preventing monopolies. You need different owners to ensure new voices and views on the media market. Regulation on how big companies can become to ensure there is competition. Regulation of copyright and intellectual property. To ensure that media industries can make money, the media industries themselves want some form of regulation. Then they can claim products of their own. Regulated content regulation for accuracy. Against fraudulent or deceptive misleading advertisement to ensure that advertising is truthful, transparent, and the products being sold are safe. Regulating for diversity, supporting media pluralism or protecting corporate interests. Fairness doctrine provides opportunity for representation of contrasting point of view, ensure diversity and any single viewpoint from dominating coverage. Often done, broadcasting governments provide funding that enchants diversity in voices, viewpoints, and genres, since they do not have any commercial interest. Regulating for morality. Regulations on obscene incident material and violent and sexual content. Media industries prefer to develop their own regulations instead of government regulation to have more agency and control of the form of regulation. Self-regulation. Ratings that alert parents to content that may not be appropriate for their children, like rated R, rated 16. Regulating in the national interest, military censorship. Governments sometimes regulate media to protect or advance what they define as their national interest, the goal and ambition of a nation. Freedom of expression, right to inform or protected national safety. Regulating access and distribution. Net neutrality. The principle that all data on the internet should be treated equally. Internet service providers should just deliver necessary access, being neutral about the actual content. The internet should remain an open place where everyone has equal access to content. So net neutrality is just being neutral on the internet without being hateful. Vertical integration. Media corporations own content in their pipes, like Netflix. This could lead to unfair competitive practices, as this development make it difficult for independent producers to distribute their content. Regulations separate distribution and production. Social media regulation, hate speech, privacy, fake news. Social media tend to argue they are just platforms for not media companies because they do not create content. Handoff approach. Social media as companies, they need to have responsibility over the content produced. Argument, the algorithms behind the platform are not neutral. They intentionally steer particular users towards content they are likely to find most engaging, enacting, then to return to the site. Fake news gets put forward a lot, so social media companies are responsible. Banners, the information is false. Underlying pattern. Liberals, the left, government regulations to protect the public against the domination of the private sector, support regulations that encourage diversity in the media content, media pluralism. Conservative, government regulation is meddling in the free market and property rights. Laissez-faire approach, but regulation in case of content deemed until for children expectation when it comes to issues of morality. Nearly all observers agree that some restrictions on the content of media are necessary. Chapter 5. Media Organizations and Professionals. Structure agency dynamic. Structure economic and political structures of media industries that identify the goal and shape of the terrain of the decision making. Agency media workers make decisions by anticipating and responding to economic and political constraints while also assessing audiences. Responding to political constraints. Compliance. Easiest strategy because it avoids conflicts with regulations. Preemption. Media of professional anticipate on the media regulation. Proposing to self-regulate gives it media professional work control an agency. So responding to political constraints is compliance, preemption, which is media of professional anticipate of the media regulation. They propose to self-regulate. So interpretation, usually regulations give some room to be interpreted. Ignore regulations and challenge them. Lobby for more favorable rules. Big companies have the resources for this using political power. Two main challenges of economics of media: the high cost of producing media, professional media production requires huge investments, and the unpredictability of audience tastes. Very competitive media landscape, different options for a consumer. This is why many ideas flop. Difficult to predict success because of popularity is not based on quality. Responding to economic constraints, formally imitating formats that are already successful because this is an indication on how the new products will perform in the market. Hit shows compensate for failed shows, talent shows limit to the strategy. At some point, audiences accept more diversity and innovation using stars and celebrities in media production. Stars get a lot of attention, so they draw attention to the media products. This hit system is the underlying operation of most major companies. Media executives rather than audiences make the initial judgment crucial for achieving success. Convergence culture. A flow of content across multiple media platforms. Merchandising. Henry Jenkins. Every story plays itself out. Henry Jenkins. Every story plays itself out across the maximum number of media channels. Media organizations work to create entire fictional universes that can be extended and sold across a range of media platforms. Structure. Conventions, a practice of technique widely used to field by media professionals. Genres or writing style, typical ways of working and communicating with audiences through particular routines where established practices used in the media. So it's conventional, there's conventions. Routines, the rationalization of work practices through procedures. Conventions emerge Conventions emerge through the development of a customary or routinized way of working. Routines and conventions are shaped by economic, political, and organizational forces as well as technological constraints. Why do conventions exist? To help market products, the need for rationalization and efficiency, routines save time essentially to meet deadlines. Media workers know that is expected of them. Conventions follow commercial logic. Efficient working save money. Some conventions have proven their commercial success to be so they're used to over and over again. No, 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 no. How are conventions learned? Professional roles, bundles of expectation associated with a particular job. We learn this through socialization, a process where we learn and internalize the values, beliefs, and normal of culture. Process by which we learn the basic route of rules of our role. Through education, training, and on the job, people are socialized in the values and beliefs of the particular job. Expectations of a role are reinforced by our interaction with others. Conventions are dynamic. Conventions result to consistency and continuity, but over time conventions can change for agency. Roles in journalism. Informative disseminator focuses on getting it to the public quickly, sharing clear and accurate information. Interpreter, investigate, explore complex issues, and adversary, critical position in this case, they seek to expose perceived wrongdoing such as fraud. So informative disseminator is just focused on getting information to the public very, very quickly. Only a limited range of topics of people are included in the news. How is the selection made? So gatekeeper journalists allow some events to cross through to become news, while others remain closed. Same with books, if they're allowed to publish or not. Just like internet is also being gatekept. Steps Newsnets. The standard practices news organization used to gather news, while services full-time reporters. So they are like spiders creating nets over the city to just get news. Beats. Official location or topics where the news can be expected to occur. Sites where reported are stationary, expecting that people want to read about. So it's kind of like beating up, like people beat up in the streets, and you know where it's gonna happen. So it's beats, locations where it happens. And round, a process by which reporters develop schedules for visiting locations and talking to sources that are like produced news. So beats, it's beat up. Round, it's finished. Round, it's finished. So a process by which reporter developed schedules. The definition of what is a relevant beat and what happened there deserves coverage is not universal. It changes according to a given media's outlet, target audience, and mission. But newsworthiness is socially constructed. News values, the factor that journalists consider when deciding the worthiness of news of any event, statement, or other potential story. Personalization, people like to hear about other people, so news stories often have a personal angle. References to elite nations and powers, and negative, bad, and expected news attract more attention. Consequences of constraints. Before anything even happens, news organizations have already made decisions about what they intend to look for news. News tend to reflect the views and opinions of those in power, as journalists get information from certain sources, which make outsiders or critics have not as easily access to media coverage. Emphasis is on the events, momentary spotlights in the expense of process. Expanded volume, news organizations today must produce an almost endless supply of content. Increased speed, the need to constantly update website has meant the time frame for making decisions about news is tightly compressed. More stress and less time to make informed news judgments. Speed leads to homogenization of mainstream media news imitation. Quality standards under pressures. So the quality is going lower. The speed is faster, but everything is homogeneous. Augmented journalism or algorithm assisted journalism is journalism that uses AI. News is often where the elites are. Many events and people are excluded from news. It focuses on the activities of official institutions. We tend to be more interested in countries that feel close to us, in both geographical and cultural sense. News routines can also lead to similarities. If all journalists use the same conventions, news can thus sometimes slow down media pluralism. It is important to ensure that people are exposed to different viewpoints and arguments. It is through critical and in depth reporting that we can understand issues and make informed decisions when we vote. Advertisement revenues and readership has declined for newspapers, lead to economic pressure. Routines need particular conventions such as objectivity, the belief that in objectivity is faith in fact, and the truest of values and commitment for investigation. If we understand objectivity to be a set of routine journalistic practices, we can see why all the news coverage is pretty much the same. The objects being reflected in the media are not passive. The resulting images often reflect the relative power of actors in our society rather than some objective reality. Objective journalism, by highlighting the views and activities of officials, can be seen to balance to favor those in power. Alternative media seeks to challenge objectivity and impartiality from both an ethical and political standpoint. Ideology, a system of cultural beliefs, meaning and values that defines and explains the social world and that makes values judgments about it. Ideologies are ways of seeing the world. Each of us grows up in a particular culture, meaning that we are socialized and particular ideologies. The media is vital in socialization process because the media circulates various views and ideas. In this process, some views and ideas are more common than others, dominant ideologies. Ideologies do not necessarily reflect reality accurately. We can often be unaware of ideological position in contemporary media because they are deeply ingrained, therefore taken for granted. This makes it complicated to analyze ideology. The accumulation of media or ideology as a normalization suggests what is normal and what is deviant. Such views change over time. The symbolic power of media, the ability of the media to shape what is perceived as normal, which social divisions are accepted and overlooked. Of media, text can normalize behaviors, they can also set limits on the range of accessible ideas. Ideologies do not appear in the media text because producers consciously want to pose their values and audience. Rather, they're a result of the intersection of a variety of structural forces. Ideological analysis. Scholars are interested in the underlying images of society provided by media content and the recurring patterns that are found in the media. James D. Hunter, Culture Wars. Fundamental issues of morality, such as abortion, homosexuality, immigrations, are being fought and negotiated in the media. Debates about topics largely unfold in media. They are discussed in blogs, talk shows. No meaning is constructed from media. It is never just one ideology perpetuated. Battlefield of ideologies in the media. Stereotypes and dominant ideologies are perpetuated by the media, but at the same time, the media is used to challenge these ideologies. People can use social media and alternative forms of journalism to raise awareness of different worldviews. Denotation, the identification of something by pointing it out. So denotate is to point it out. Factors of literal meaning. MacBook is a great laptop. Connotation refers to the overtones, additional meaning, and implication associated with a word or an object. It is the level of connotation that associations come into play that ideology is at work. Apple is a luxury brand. You're connotating. Karl Marx and Marxist approaches. Means of production, facilities, and resources by which we can produce goods, owned by wealthy people who hire workers who offer their labor but don't own means of production, and workers don't get profit, only salary. So there is a class divide, class struggle. The workers didn't realize they were exploited and oppressed. False consciousness. Aspect of a social world that serve the interest of the few, while wrongly considered as serving the interests of the money. So basically, it's like sheep going again and thinking they are actually leading themselves. Actually, there is a sheep master. A process of misinterpreting reality in order to justify the action of those in power. The subordinate classes who accept the basic ideology of the ruling class. They have false consciousness because their worldview actually serves the interesting of others. Through a lot of processes, the owners can install this false consciousness and promote it among workers. The owners may be feeding a lot of information and maybe even give them hope that they can become owners themselves. If that's true or not doesn't matter, it makes it more difficult for the workers to see their exploitation. Needs for social revolution to break through false consciousness, but the worst is can develop. Class consciousness, workers realize they can have solidarity as a class with one another against the owners. They must struggle to overcome their exploitation part, taking over the means of production and redistributing among workers. Neo-Marxist Antonio Gramsci. Hegemony, widely shared belief about what is right and wrong that empower a specifically group in society based on the concept of the one who lead. Господство. Hegemony is господство. Consent is exercised through a kind of cultural leadership. It's one. Control beliefs and you. Then control people. It is constructed, challenges, and resented on a daily basis through the products of media. It is always in the making. Hegemony uses common sense, things we accept as the way they are. To wield power, it is of course efficient if people simply agree with the dominant ideas instead of having to enforce these ideas through treat. So that's the idea of Antonio Gramsci. Cultural hegemony, a pine tree for Christmas. You don't think of these ideas. These ideas were given to you and control your actions. We generally think that the natural is not a social construction that is more enduring and stable than the creation of human society. If social structures are defined as natural, they take off a kind of permanency and legitimacy that elevates them to the realm of the uncontested. What is natural and normal is a central part of terrain of hegemony. Cultural studies, 1960s, focuses on the relationship between culture and wider systems of power. It criticizes the ways of which society is organized, particularly important in the field of media because it analyzes how mass media commercialized products play a role in issues of power and ideology. Stuart Hall. Media is one of the principal sites where the cultural leadership, the work of hegemony, is exercised. Politics of significance. The media produce images of a world that give events a particular meaning. Media images represent the world. Media and popular culture is an arena of consent and restriction. Media do not simply reflect reality, but represent reality. Representation is a very different notion from that of reflection. It implies that active work of selecting and presenting, of structure and shaping, not merely transmitting of an already existing meaning, but a more active labor of making things mean. Media has the power to signify events in a certain way. The concept of representation enables an analysis on how particular ideas are discussed in the media, but gives us insight into a range of dominant meanings in the media and how particular ideas are excluded. Three approaches to study the media. Social scientific approach aims to predict and discover universal rules. Interpretive approach focuses on understanding rather than prediction, qualitative methods. A critical approach seeks to reveal power structures, critical studies. One reason why TV is considered to be ideologically charged is that it relies almost exclusively on a conventional, realist form of image construction that masks the working of a camera. How TV pictures its pictures of reality. New Monism set of ideas, norms, and practices most frequently and powerfully represented in the media that seem on the surface to celebrate motherhood, though in reality promulgate standards of perfection that are beyond our reach. Advertising pressures and promotes of cultural consumption, it elevates certain values and promotes a worldwide that stresses the individual and the realm of private life. Secondary discourse, those ideas of abrupt social relationships that are embedded within the ads. Interpersonal advertising, TV and music lead global younglings to adopt similar styles by selecting the same brand. Technological solutionism. Digital technologies and big data are touted as the source of solution for everything from personal troubles to global crises. Chapter 7: Social Inequality and Media Representation. Representations result of processes of selection that invariably mean that certain aspects of reality are highlighted and others are neglected. All representations represent the world in ways that are both incomplete and narrow. Readers and audiences develop at least some sense of social world through their exposure to both entertainment and news media. 5 ways to access the significance of media content. Content as reflection of producers draws connections between media content and its producers. The interest of characteristics of media personnel could be reflected in the content. Content as reflection of audience preferences. The idea that media producers are only giving the people what they want also implies that people want what they get. Content as reflection of society in general. Arguably, the media content reflects the concerns, norms, and views that also circulate in society at large. Content as an influence and audience. The influence of media is so diffuse that a direct link is usually very difficult to establish. Content as self-enclosed text analyze media content of one specific movie and what and how it is represented. Limited perspective doesn't connect to the wild media content and patterns, not relevant to this course as we apply sociological views, which mean we draw connections between society and media content. Social inequality that exists in society at large are reflected in media content. An even battlefield of perspectives, as some people are better represented. The general pattern: white middle and upper class men have historically controlled the media industry. Racism, stereotypes, and stereotypes about femininity. However, this can change over time as consequence of activism and research. Because minorities comprise a relatively small part of the population, mainstream media did not see themselves as an important segment of the mass audiences. Racial minorities were either ignored or stereotyped. As social commercial organizations, media pay close attention to trends because society is becoming more diverse. Activism, fear of legal action. Growth in media outlets, more opportunities to represent different groups in society. May also determine the impact of diversity. The legal of racism may manifest itself in more subtle but perhaps equal powerful ways. Traditional racism, open bigotry, usually based on beliefs about the biological interior of blacks. Modern racism, more complex, avoiding old fashioned racist images, hides behind a sentence. Stereotypes are now more subtle, and stereotype thinking is reinforced at levels like to remain below conscious awareness. All lives matter. I'm not racist, but African Americans and other minorities have responded to racist stereotypes by producing a culture of resistance. The tension between white produced images of black cultural resistance has become increasingly entangled in more complex social conflicts and concerns. Women are included in media in equal roles and less frequently than men. Sexist stereotypes about femininity, family friends, romance may have now taken subtler forms. Women's sports, gender blend racism acknowledges the segregation of women and men's sport and make women's athletic accomplishments appear lackluster to men through inferior coverage. Working class interpretation and negative stereotypical portrayals. Working class families struggle because of incompetence and lack of intelligence, while middle class families succeed because of competence and intelligence. Such images help reinforce the idea that class based inequality is just unfunctional. News tend to highlight issues of concern to middle and upper class readers. Hard news usually feature people in position of power, especially politicians and professionals. Some people are more valuable than others. Most media have commercials supported by advertising. The LGBT community has historically been underrepresented and distorted in media coverage. Chapter 8: Audiences and Creators. Central argument that audiences are active, not passive, in their relationship with media. Early research audiences are passive people are easily influenced by media. This understanding has not completely disappeared. Third person effect. The perception that others will be more affected by media content than oneself. People tend to overestimate media influence on others, and perhaps underestimate their influence on themselves. Four different ways that can be understood as audiences being active. 1. Interpretation. People interpret media content and give meaning to it. Each person is different. To each person will have their own understanding of media products. The social context of interpretation. Media consumption is a social activity. People interact about media, consume it together, and share interpretation. Interpretative community, both in structural forces at work and forces of human agency. Collective action. This is when audiences organize themselves to demand something from media producers. Audiences and media producers. Matrix media. Media landscape enabled by the internet, these days non-official media products made by audiences, is happening on a much larger scale as the digital tools for producing media have become more accessible and affordable. Results thrive in an environment where distinctions between production and consumption blur. Participatory culture. Henry Jenkins. A culture. Relatively low barrier to artistic expression and civic engagement where members feel their contributions social matter, where members feel some degree of social connection with one another. The ideal of participatory culture is tempered by the reality of uneven online participation. Participation inequality. Large online communities typically have small numbers of creators and many lurkers who look like they don't contribute. Types: creators, conversationalists, critics, collectors, joiners, spectators, inactive. Creators, conversationalists, critics, collectors, joiners, spectators, and inactive. Digital divide. The inequality that exists in simple access to the internet, class, income, and education affects online participation. Roles of professional gatekeepers have been diminished. In a sea of content, users can be overwhelmed by a range of options, result in choice fatigue. Different sort of gatekeeping arises algorithms, ordinary media users influence what content receive attention, secondary gatekeeping, promoting the wider circulation of news. Users and gratifications. An approach to mass media focused on people's motivation and needs. Not studying effects, but why do people use media? What are people doing with media? Strengths. Respect the intellect and ability of media consumer to play active role in choosing what media they are exposed to. Provide insightful analysis how people experience media content. Provide useful insights. Weaknesses cannot easily address the presence or absence of effect. Actually, measuring why people use media can be complicated. Critical cultural studies approach focuses on how people interpret and make meaning out of the media content they use. Media content does not necessarily have a single meaning, as people actively interpret such content in variable ways connected to their social background. Stuart Hall, model of encoding and decoding. Production side, media products are encoded with meaning. Each media product has intended meaning. Arguably, here, ideologies feed into the media products, affected by conventions, roles, skills, and assumptions. Media consumers decode the intended meaning, interpret media influenced by their personal, social location, knowledge, views, backgrounds, and education. Some meanings are easier to construct because they draw on widely shared cultural values and set up assumptions about the way the world works. If the producers and consumers share the same ideologies, it is more likely that the intended meaning is decoded by the audiences. Polysemy, the notion of multiple meaning that can coexist in media context. Media producers are open to plurality of meanings given to them. Like Eurovision, it's plural, there's a lot of options. Some producers have more interpretation than others, gives producers the ability to reach a wider audience, more money. How does encoding and decoding works? Important of codes, specific conventions of characteristics for each medium. You need this knowledge of codes in order to understand the message. Also need to know cultural codes, the taken of granted knowledge of how the world works. The decoding process can lead to three possible readings: preferred, dominant reading, the producer intended meaning; negotiated reading, the audience member accepts the overall framework, but the message is also contested in certain aspects; and oppositional reading goes against the perspective presented in the media products in the malls. Interpretive resisting interpretation that are in direct opposition to dominant reading. You choose to go against a meaning. Discursive resource tools. The cultural tools for decoding social class, age, race, cultural background gives people a language and framework. The same cultural tools are not available to everyone. As a result, the meanings we assign to different media products will ultimately be related to social positions. Reception theory and critical cultural studies also pays attention to how media consumption is embedded in the everyday life of audiences and how the social context of media use matters. Example, Radaway. Roman's books were seen as lowbrow culture and a traditional genre. Nevertheless, Radaway took the act of reading itself seriously. She found that the act of reading was very important, rather than the actual content. For many women, reading these books was an escape from the demand of their daily lives. It gave them time for themselves instead of caring for others. Critical studies approach, reception theory. Strengths: respect intellect and ability of media consumers. A knowledge range of meaning in media text suggests that media products are open to different interpretations. It seeks in depth understanding on how people interpret media. So they respect intellect, they acknowledge the range of meaning, and in-depth understanding. That's reception theory. But weaknesses, usually based on subjective interpretation and qualitative research methods, cannot address presence or absence of effect of media on audiences. Reception theory stresses the agency of audiences to interpret media products in different ways. This does not mean any interpretation is possible. There are interpretive constraints. The encoding process makes certain interpretation more likely, the social context, etc. Second screen, when users watching television employ an additional digital screen to access internet platforms to discuss who they are seeing on TV in real time. One of the reasons why people use the media, fun. Media entertains people as means of distracting from the more important areas in life. Culture jamming, a range of tactics used to critique, subvert, and jam the working of consumer culture. Pranking, resisting a way of which an ad or message is sales propaganda. Sorry, there was an issue.